Edward of Woodstock was born on the 15th of June, 1330, the eldest son of King Edward III of England. History would remember him by a darker name, the Black Prince, earned from the black armor he wore into combat. He fought his first major battle at Crécy in August 1346 at just 16 years old, and walked away from it already feared across Europe. 10 years later, that reputation was tested against odds that should have ended him completely. In September 1356, near the town of Poitiers in France, the 26-year-old prince found himself trapped. His army numbered roughly 6,000 exhausted men, low on food, cut off from retreat. Waiting for him was King John II of France, commanding a force of over 35,000. The math alone should have decided the battle before it began. 6,000 against 35,000 is not a fight, it's an execution. And yet the Black Prince refused to surrender, refused to negotiate, and instead did something no one expected. He prepared to win. The trap at Poitiers didn't happen by accident. For months, Edward had been leading raids across southern France as part of the wider Hundred Years' War, a conflict already a generation deep between the English and French crowns. His summer campaign of burning and looting had stretched his army thin, and King John II saw his chance to finally crush the prince who had humiliated France for a decade. John didn't just outnumber him, he chose the ground, the timing, and the terrain, positioning his forces to block every route back to English territory. The English army was starving, fatigued, and functionally surrounded. Most commanders in this position sent terms. Edward sent none. Instead, he studied the land around him. Hedgerows, sunken lanes, and marshland surrounded the field, obstacles that meant nothing to infantry but could break a cavalry charge apart before it ever reached its target. He placed his archers behind this natural wall of terrain and hid the bulk of his infantry inside a nearby wood, invisible to French scouts. Then he waited for dawn and for the French king to make the first move. At dawn on the 19th of September 1356, the French cavalry charged first directly into the terrain Edward had chosen for them. English longbowmen, hidden behind hedgerows, tore through 3 consecutive waves of French horsemen within the first hour. War horses went down screaming in the mud, blocking the charge lines behind them before a single Frenchman reached English steel. When the French formation finally broke under the chaos, Edward didn't hold his position, he attacked it. He led the countercharge personally, driving into the disorganized French ranks at the exact moment they were most vulnerable. In the middle of that collapsing battle, Edward's men found King John II himself, still fighting on foot after his horse was killed beneath him. The Black Prince captured the King of France in hand-to-hand combat. John surrendered his gauntlet directly to him. Over 2,000 French nobles lay dead on the field, 6,000 more surrendered. An army outnumbered nearly 6-1 had just captured the enemy king, outright, one of the most lopsided reversals of the entire war. That night, the prince who had just annihilated a French army personally served dinner to the king he'd captured, a gesture of chivalric respect that stunned both sides. John too was eventually ransomed for 3 million gold crowns, roughly a third of France's entire annual income. Edward would live another 20 years after Poitiers. He never became king. He died of dysentery in 1376 at 45, killed not by any of the men who'd tried to kill him on a battlefield, but by illness. Saladin is remembered as the man who reunited the Muslim world and shattered the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem. What's far less known is that before he ever faced a single Crusader army in his greatest battle, an entirely different enemy had already marked him for death, 3 separate times, not Christian knights, but a secret order from within his own faith. The Nizari Ismailis, known to history as the Hashanshin, operated from the mountain fortress of Masyaf in Syria under their leader Rashid ad-Din Sinan, the man Crusaders called the Old Man of the Mountain. Saladin's growing power threatened Ismaili territory, and Sinan responded the only way his order knew how. The first attempt came in December 1174 inside Saladin's own war camp at Aleppo. An assassin disguised as a soldier got close enough to stab him. The blade turned aside by his armor before it could kill him. His guards cut down the attacker on the spot. 18 months later, a second assassin got even closer, stabbing him in the head during the siege of Azaz. The blade sliced through his cap and grazed his skull, missing his brain by a matter of inches. From that night on, Saladin slept in chainmail. He had a private tower built around his tent. He ringed his camp with ash and chalk so that any footstep leaving toward him would be visible by morning. It wasn't enough to stop a third attempt. Furious, Saladin marched his army directly to Masyaf, intending to end the Hashashin threat by force, laying siege to their mountain stronghold itself. According to the accounts that survive, the Old Man of the Mountain answered not with an army, but but with a message. Saladin woke one night inside his own heavily guarded tent to find a poisoned dagger resting on his pillow, inches from his throat, along with a note. The warning was simple: abandon the siege or die. No guard had seen anyone enter. No alarm had been raised. Whether Sinan himself slipped past an entire army to deliver it personally, or simply had an agent already embedded inside Saladin's camp, the message worked exactly as intended. Saladin lifted the siege immediately, and never moved against Masyaf again for the rest of his life. He went on to shatter the Crusader army at the Battle of Hattin in July 1187, then reclaimed Jerusalem itself, that October, the single event that had defined the entire crusading era in reverse. He outlasted the massive Christian counter-invasion known as the Third Crusade, facing down Richard the Lionheart himself and surviving it. The assassins who had gotten a blade against his skull, who had left a dagger on his sleeping pillow inside his own guarded camp, never touched him again. The men who had trained for years to kill Saladin up close never managed it. He died in bed of natural causes on the 4th of March 1193, in Damascus. At 56 years old, the empire builder marked for assassination 3 times over, taken in the end by nothing more dramatic than age itself. When his treasury was opened after his death, it held only a handful of silver coins and a single piece of gold. He had given away almost everything he owned to widows and orphans across the empire he'd built. He wasn't the only legendary warrior whose ending refused to match his life. Centuries earlier, and an ocean away in Spain, Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, a man both Christian and Muslim armies came to know as El Cid, had spent 30 years undefeated in battle, exiled twice by his own king, yet feared by everyone who faced him. By 1094 he ruled the city of Valencia as his own personal kingdom, answering to no crown at all. When the powerful Almoravid Empire sent army after army to take the city from him, he destroyed every single one. Then, in July 1099, El Cid died quietly of natural causes inside the city he had conquered, a death almost insultingly ordinary for a man who had never lost a war. His story, however, wasn't finished yet. According to the accounts passed down after his death, El Cid's wife, Ximena Diaz, refused to let his passing hand the city to their enemies. She had his body embalmed and strapped upright into the saddle of his war horse, armored as if for battle. At dawn, she ordered the gates of besieged Valencia thrown open, and the Castilian army rode out behind their dead commander's corpse, visible through the morning mist to the Almoravid forces outside. The besiegers broke and fled in terror at the sight of a man they believed already dead riding toward them. Valencia held for 3 more years under Ximena's rule alone before finally falling, but the legend of El Cid was already sealed into Spanish history forever. 3 men, 3 empires shaken. An outnumbered prince who captured a king, an emperor who survived 3 assassination attempts from the deadliest killers of his age, and a warlord who never lost a battle in life and somehow won 1 more from death. None of them were killed by the enemies who spent years trying hardest to end them. Dysentery took the Black Prince. Old age took Saladin. Nothing at all took El Cid. His body outlived his own war. That's the pattern history keeps hiding in plain sight. The deadliest men of the medieval world weren't beaten by swords, armies, or assassins. They simply refused to die on anyone's terms, but their own right, up until nature finally collected what the battlefield never could. If this hit different, subscribe for more forgotten history and drop a comment with which medieval warrior deserves the next full video.